If you've ever felt a quiet kind of shame about your emotional struggles, maybe, or like you were weak for needing help, or maybe you've even been told to just get over it, then you've definitely experienced the silent power of these really deeply ingrained myths. These aren't just, casual phrases. They are actual narratives woven right into society, and they have these profound, often really devastating consequences.
Precisely. And these myths, they don't just exist in the abstract, do they? They actively prevent millions from seeking vital support. They foster this pervasive culture of silence, and they really deepen the shame people feel about something as fundamental as their mental well-being.
And that's the core of it, right? Our sources consistently highlight that mental health isn't some kind of luxury or trend or, just some niche issue for other people. It's an inherent part of being human. Yet somehow we've collectively embraced this idea that if you struggle, it's like a sign of weakness, something you have to hide.
That's the very deception we're here to unravel today. Our mission for this deep dive is to rigorously unpack some of the biggest falsehoods society has taught us about mental illness, about therapy, about emotional struggles, and ultimately about what it genuinely means to care for your mind. We're drawing from, current psychology, scientific research, and real lived experiences, not just opinions or sort of fleeting motivational platitudes.
Yeah, because what our media often portrays as mental health, the really dramatic breakdowns, the caricatures, that's rarely what it truly looks like in reality. More often, it's the quiet panic attacks behind closed doors, the sheer exhaustion of pretending to be okay, or maybe that friend who smiles in every photo but, cries alone at night. And it's very invisibility, as the research you share points out.
Yeah.
That makes it so insidious. We can't truly heal something we refuse to even name.
And the scale is just staggering, host. Our global health reports indicate that over 970 million people worldwide live with a mental disorder that's more than 11% of the global population.
Wow.
And here in many countries, like the US and UK, studies show that 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health issue at some point. This isn't rare. It's a fundamental part of the human condition that touches your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, your family. And perhaps, it's you too. Stigma just thrives in this silence, leading to isolation and, prolonged suffering.
What's truly fascinating here, and something our sources really emphasize, is that mental health isn't just confined to clinical diagnoses like, say, major depression or generalized anxiety. It's really about your capacity to manage stress, to cope with life's relentless challenges, to relate meaningfully to others and how you perceive yourself. It exists on this broad spectrum, and every single one of us at some point falls somewhere along it. You don't need a formal diagnosis or even like a breaking point to treat it with the seriousness it deserves.
Exactly. And that profound connection between our mental and physical well-being is so often overlooked because of these myths. When your mind is under distress, your body unequivocally feels it. Chronic stress, anxiety, untreated depression, these aren't just feelings. They tangibly impact your sleep. They compromise your immune system, disrupt digestion, strain your heart, hinder your ability to focus, and astonishingly can even affect your life expectancy. Yet despite these, irrefutable links, mental health care still receives just a fraction of the attention, the funding, and the societal support compared to physical health conditions. It's a huge disparity.
And the stakes couldn't be higher, really. This collective societal misunderstanding, these deeply held beliefs are quite literally costing lives. Suicide remains one of the leading causes of death globally. And the tragic reality is that the majority of those who die by suicide had a treatable mental health condition, but often didn't get the help they needed, largely because they felt too ashamed or too alone to ask.
That's exactly why this deep dive is about unlabeling. It's about dismantling that inherited baggage of misinformation and equipping you, the listener, with the language, the clarity, and the courage to perceive mental health not as some kind of flaw, but as a crucial dimension of the human experience.
Because the truth, as we'll explore today, is that you are not alone. You are not broken. And you are definitely not too much. You are a human being navigating an incredibly complex world, and you deserve care, support, and compassion, not these damaging myths and misinformation. So let's begin by tackling our first major misconception.
Okay, so our first myth to unpick today. Mental health issues are rare. This is perhaps one of the most pervasive and insidious untruths. It fosters this false sense of distance, like an us versus them, implying that struggling is some kind of anomaly.
Yeah, it makes you feel isolated. And yet, what the data consistently shows us is the complete opposite. Mental health issues are incredibly common. As we just touched on, nearly 1 billion people globally, that's roughly 1 in 8 of us, live with a mental health disorder. And in countries like the US and UK, that figure climbs to 1 in 4 people experiencing a mental health challenge in any given year. This isn't some fringe issue. It's statistically significant and just profoundly human.
And what's often missed, I think, is that these struggles rarely look like those dramatic, media-driven portrayals. The research indicates it more often manifests as, say, the coworker who's constantly fatigued, the friend who frequently cancels plans last minute, the classmate who seems withdrawn, or maybe the parent who lashes out because of unspoken stress. Did you know anxiety disorders are actually the most common mental health condition globally?
Really, more than depression.
Yeah, and depression itself is the single leading cause of disability worldwide. And we're seeing a significant rise in burnout, too, affecting even those who outwardly appear to be thriving.
It's also so vital to remember that mental health challenges, they truly don't discriminate, do they? They affect people across every age, race, gender, income level, background. You can have a stable family, a successful career, a loving partner, and still find yourself battling depression or anxiety.
Absolutely. It's such a complex interplay of biology, environment, genetics, personal history factors, often way beyond our immediate control.
And this myth, the rarity myth, it creates this deeply isolating effect. It tells people that their experience is unique, that something is wrong with them, rather than acknowledging they're part of this, well, universal human landscape. It pushes people further into the shadows, making an already difficult journey even lonelier.
Exactly. And because of this myth, so many people never even receive a formal diagnosis. They might attribute chronic fatigue or persistent irritability, sleeplessness, or that sort of pervasive sense of emptiness to just stress or maybe a personality quirk. Our sources show this can lead to years, sometimes decades, of unnecessary suffering for conditions that are actually entirely treatable.
But here's where we see a hopeful shift, right? We're observing a significant cultural change. Celebrities, athletes, even prominent public figures are speaking more openly about their struggles.
Yes.
Therapists and advocates are proactively raising awareness, and schools and workplaces are starting to integrate mental health support more robustly, though there's still a way to go.
That shift is absolutely crucial because the more we normalize these struggles, the more people feel empowered to seek help without that crushing shame. So if you're listening and currently wrestling with something, please know this. You're not an outlier. You're not some exception. You're part of a vast global community. We heard from one listener who said they spent years thinking they were just weak and lazy because I couldn't snap out of my anxiety.
Yeah.
That internal narrative is precisely what this myth feeds.
It's so true. Talking about it doesn't make it worse, it simply makes it visible. And when something becomes visible, it moves from being this invisible burden to a challenge that's actually manageable and treatable.
Yeah. So when we really grasp that nearly 1 billion people worldwide live with a mental health condition, it profoundly reframes our understanding. Not rare, not shameful, just real.
Which brings us perfectly to our next major misconception.
Okay, myth number 2. Only weak people struggle with mental health. Now, this is arguably one of the most damaging myths because it directly assaults an individual's sense of self-worth, their resilience, often trapping them in silence. It implies that if you're truly strong, you just won't face emotional struggles, and if you do, well, it's some kind of personal failing.
It's such a powerful narrative, isn't it? But let's be unequivocally clear here. Struggling with mental health does not signify weakness. In fact, our sources suggest it very often signifies the opposite. It means you've likely been carrying this immense burden fighting battles that are completely invisible to others, often for extended periods, without adequate support. That honestly sounds like the very definition of strength to me. Society, in so many ways, glorifies relentless hustle and, stoic independence. It teaches us to meticulously hide any sign of pain. Boys are taught not to cry, girls to always maintain a pleasant demeanor, adults to just hold it together.
And what's truly illuminating here is that the real weakness isn't experiencing the struggle itself. The real weakness lies in the performance, in pretending everything is fine while you're internally falling apart, in denying your fundamental needs because you're afraid of judgment, or in that debilitating belief that you have to navigate these profoundly challenging experiences entirely alone.
And what's fascinating here is that asking for help isn't some kind of surrender. It's actually an act of profound courage. It demands self-awareness to even recognize the need, the vulnerability to admit it, and frankly, the sheer bravery to reach out in a world that often pressures us to be anything but open.
Exactly. Bottling things up doesn't fortify you. It just delays the breakdown, often manifesting as, stress-related physical illness, fractured relationships, or debilitating exhaustion. True strength, as the research underscores time and again, is emotional honesty.
Think about individuals we universally recognize as strong. Soldiers, elite athletes, first responders. These are people who operate under extraordinary pressure, who face incredible adversity, and they too wrestle with mental health challenges. Veterans grapple with PTSD, athletes battle performance anxiety, first responders confront burnout and trauma.
Yes, absolutely. These are not weak people. These are simply human beings responding to the immense demands placed upon them. It highlights that mental health struggles are just part of the human experience, not some kind of flaw.
And this myth, it also breeds this deep internalized shame. If you believe only weak people struggle, then by extension, you judge yourself incredibly harshly, you downplay your own pain, and you deny yourself the compassion you'd readily offer a friend with, say, a physical injury. We wouldn't label someone weak for having a broken bone, yet we frequently apply that same dismissive label to the mind.
And this is such a critical point that the science really clarifies. The brain is an organ, just like your heart or your lungs. Emotions are deeply biological processes. Trauma literally reshapes your nervous system. Depression alters your brain chemistry. These are physiological realities, not character defects or moral failures.
Yeah.
And this myth, unfortunately, also reinforces harmful gender norms. Men often feel less able to seek help due to this perceived weakness, which contributes to higher suicide rates, tragically. And women or non-binary individuals sometimes get dismissed as being dramatic.
We absolutely need to redefine strength. It's not about perfection or relentless emotional suppression or maintaining this rigid silence. Instead, true strength, as our sources suggest, is the courage to face what is profoundly difficult and to still keep moving forward, even if that means reaching out for a helping hand. A listener who battled anxiety captured this so well, sharing they spent years thinking they were just weak and lazy because I couldn't snap out of my anxiety.
Yeah, that story was powerful.
And another listener living with bipolar disorder initially believed that my diagnosis meant I was broken beyond repair. But their journey to stability through asking for help is just a powerful testament to real strength.
Ultimately, mental health struggles don't diminish your strength. They actually highlight your humanity. And reaching for help isn't an admission of defeat. It's a courageous decision that your well-being and your life are worth fighting for.
Absolutely. That's strength redefined right there. Okay, let's move on to our next significant myth.
Myth number 3. Therapy is only for crazy people.
Yeah.
This belief, it's such a relic of outdated understanding, deeply entrenched by historical stigma and, frankly, unfortunate media portrayals. It suggests that seeking therapy is some kind of last resort, reserved only for those experiencing the most severe mental distress.
And it's just profoundly inaccurate, isn't it? Our research indicates that therapy isn't just for people in crisis or at their absolute breaking point. It's for anyone with a mind, with emotions, with relationships, dealing with stress, or simply with a desire to understand themselves better and grow. To put it simply, therapy is for everyone. And let's start by immediately discarding that really loaded and dismissive word, crazy. It's vague, it's harmful, and it just turns genuine pain into a derogatory punchline.
Well said. While historically, therapy might have been synonymous with, institutionalization or severe mental health crises, today it stands as one of the most powerful and evidence-based tools we have for mental wellness, personal growth, and self-discovery. You genuinely don't have to be broken to engage in therapy. It's an invaluable space for developing resilience, for understanding the nuances of your own emotions, for navigating life's inevitable transitions, and for acquiring practical tools that enhance daily life.
I often think of it like this, and it's an analogy that really resonates with what you shared.
Mm.
It's like mental fitness. You don't just go to the gym when you're injured, right? You got to stay strong to improve endurance, to build resilience. Therapy is precisely that for your inner world. It's emotional hygiene. It's proactive maintenance for your mind.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Many people actively seek therapy not because anything is wrong, but simply out of curiosity or a desire to improve communication skills or just to gain a deeper self-awareness.
And it's so much more than just talking. Therapy, as our sources detail, is a guided, structured, and science-based process. Therapists are highly trained professionals who utilize empirically proven methods to help you identify unhelpful patterns, manage complex emotions, and develop practical coping strategies. They offer objective insight and clarity, providing a safe space entirely free of judgment.
Part of why this myth persists, though, I think, is deeply rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, certainly, but also maybe fear of genuine vulnerability. Therapy invites us to slow down, to confront what lies beneath the surface, and to truly process difficult emotions.
Yeah.
And that takes immense courage.
It really does.
So if we're going to label it, let's flip the script entirely. Therapy is for the brave. It's for the self-aware. It's for those who are genuinely committed to their own growth and well-being.
I love that framing. And the positive impacts of therapy, they don't always look like someone dramatically crying on a couch, Sometimes it looks like quietly learning how to set healthier boundaries. It looks like mastering effective communication with loved ones. It looks like finally understanding how to stop self-sabotaging behaviors. It looks like learning to love without fear.
Mm-hmm.
We heard from one listener who, after years of feeling weak, described starting therapy as like a light switched on. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Another young person shared how they were scared to tell anyone they were struggling because I thought I would be seen as crazy or attention-seeking before school counseling provided really life-changing support.
So let's make a collective commitment. Let's stop using that archaic word crazy. Let's stop gatekeeping healing and growth. And let's stop perpetuating the idea that therapy is somehow shameful. Choosing to go to therapy doesn't mean there's something inherently wrong with you. It means you are actively and courageously prioritizing your mental health. And that's something to be celebrated.
Definitely. Okay, our next myth, myth number 4, often prevents people from accessing potentially life-changing support. Medication is a last resort, or it's a sign of failure. This deeply ingrained belief kind of whispers that needing medication for your mental health implies you've somehow lost control, or maybe that you're not strong enough to manage your challenges on your own.
But the truth, as our sources powerfully reveal, is that medication is not a sign of defeat, and it's certainly not shameful. It is simply a tool. It's a form of support, often helping your brain to function optimally. Think about it. We don't shame someone for taking medication for heart disease, right?
Sure.
Or for managing diabetes, or for wearing glasses to correct vision. Why should mental health be treated any differently?
Exactly. Yet the stigma surrounding psychiatric medication is profound and pervasive. It's why so many people avoid it, fearing judgment, fearing being labeled as weak or crazy, even when it could make an undeniable, life-altering difference. The reality is that psychiatric medication is an evidence-based, often life-saving option that helps millions achieve stability. It works by helping to regulate chemical imbalances in the brain, providing a crucial physiological foundation upon which therapy and lifestyle changes can truly take root and be effective.
It's a powerful analogy that resonates with me.
Right.
It's like a cast on a broken leg.
Right.
It provides the necessary support for healing to actually occur. There's this common yet deeply harmful belief that you can simply meditate your way out of it or yoga your way out of needing medication.
Oh, yeah, you hear that a lot.
But what our sources highlight is that clinical depression, for example, is not about a lack of willpower. It's a neurological condition. You cannot simply outthink bipolar disorder or severe anxiety. Medication often helps create the baseline stability that allows other therapeutic tools to effectively reach and benefit the individual.
And another pervasive misconception is that medication will somehow erase your personality or turn you into an emotionless zombie. While initial adjustments to medication can certainly be challenging sometimes, when properly prescribed and monitored by a professional, the goal is not to flatten you, it's actually to help you come back. It allows the authentic you, the one buried under the weight of intrusive thoughts or overwhelming anxiety or debilitating hopelessness, to reemerge and thrive.
And let's be absolutely clear, choosing to take medication is anything but an easy way out. There's nothing easy about navigating complex healthcare systems, facing persistent societal stigma, or diligently working with a doctor to find the right medication and dosage.
Not at all.
Choosing to take medication is choosing to live better, to seek support, and to release yourself from unnecessary shame. And it's often about therapy and medication working together. The core principle is finding what works for you.
Medication is not the adversary here. The real enemies are shame, silence, and misinformation. To anyone listening who is currently taking medication for their mental health, please understand this. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not less than. You are courageous for prioritizing and supporting your well-being. We heard from a listener living with bipolar disorder who shared that after years of struggle, with medication, therapy, and the support of my partner, I found stability and hope. That's recovery in action.
That's incredible. Your mental health profoundly matters. Your peace of mind matters. Don't let fear or these outdated myths prevent you from accessing the support you truly deserve. Now let's dive into myth number 5.
Okay, myth number 5. Mental health problems are just in your head. Ugh, this phrase. It's used far too often to dismiss, minimize, or even invalidate what people are going through. It subtly implies that mental illness is imaginary or simply a failure of personal control. This belief, unfortunately, is profoundly misleading.
And what our deep dive into the sources reveals is that mental health problems are incredibly real. And they don't just exist abstractly in your head. They have tangible effects across your entire body. Deeply influencing your brain's function, your emotional state, your observable behavior, and even your long-term physical health.
Right.
They have clear biological roots impacting your brain chemistry and neurological function, specifically affecting neurotransmitters, those chemical messengers that regulate everything from mood to sleep, appetite, concentration, energy levels.
Absolutely. For instance, clinical depression isn't merely sadness. It often manifests with disrupted sleep patterns, chronic fatigue, inexplicable physical aches and pains, and significant changes in appetite. Anxiety isn't simply worrying, it's a physiological state of heightened alertness that can cause very real heart palpitations, excessive sweating, a crushing chest tightness, digestive issues. People aren't imagining these symptoms, they are experiencing them viscerally within their bodies.
And think about the impact of trauma. PTSD, for example, isn't something you can just think differently about, is it? Our research shows it literally rewires the brain's alarm system, making the amygdala, your brain's emotional processing center, hyperactive, while impacting the prefrontal cortex, which handles executive functions, and the hippocampus, crucial for memory. These are measurable, profound neurological changes.
And the physical health connection is just undeniable. Chronic stress and untreated mental illness are strongly linked to serious physical conditions. High blood pressure, increased risk of heart disease, obesity, weakened immune systems, even a demonstrable shorter life expectancy. When the mind struggles, the body unequivocally feels it and often suffers too. And behaviorally, people might withdraw from loved ones, lose interest in activities they once enjoyed, or struggle intensely with focus. These aren't choices, but deeply felt signs of a mind and body in profound distress.
Telling someone they're suffering is all in their head is not only invalidating, but deeply shaming. It implies you're imagining this, you're overreacting, just snap out of it.
Yeah.
It's akin to telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off. It's absurd.
It is.
The brain, as we've discussed, is a complex organ, just like the heart, the lungs, or the liver. Just because its struggles aren't always visibly external doesn't make them any less real or impactful.
Moreover, while biology plays a definite role, our sources also emphasize that mental health is profoundly shaped by our environment, our upbringing, trauma, relationships, and societal factors like poverty, racism, neglect. These external stressors leave deep, often physical, imprints.
Yeah.
For many, true healing only begins with validation. Recognizing that what you're feeling is real, what you're going through genuinely matters, and you're not imagining this pain.
This resonates so strongly with the listener who shared how painting became a vital outlet for them to process their depression and anxiety when words failed me. It just highlights how mental health is experienced beyond just thought, touching the entire being.
Beautiful example.
Let's permanently retire the phrase, "it's all in your head."
Yeah.
Because mental illness isn't imagined, it's lived, it's experienced, and crucially, it is treatable.
That leads us directly to myth number 6. You can just snap out of it.
Oh. This phrase, often well-intentioned, I think, but profoundly misguided. It suggests that mental health works like some simple switch that can be flipped with sheer willpower. The reality, as our research underscores, is entirely different. Yeah, when someone is in the throes of a depressive episode, telling them to just cheer up is not only unhelpful, but deeply dismissive. It's like telling someone with that broken leg to just run a marathon. Clinical depression is a complex neurological condition that fundamentally impacts motivation, energy levels, the brain's capacity to process joy.
Exactly.
Similarly, anxiety isn't merely being nervous. It's a chronic, often crippling physiological state that manifests with very real symptoms. Sweaty palms, racing heart, dizzy spells, overwhelming dread. You can't just will that away.
And trauma, true psychological trauma doesn't simply fade away with positive thinking. Our sources highlight that trauma literally rewires the brain's pathways, embedding itself in the body's memory and profoundly impacting an individual's sense of safety, trust, and even identity. Healing from trauma demands a sense of safety, building trust, and almost always requires guided therapy and professional support, not simply a stronger will.
This whole snap out of it mentality is insidious because it implies that mental health struggles are a choice, or maybe a moral failing, which only deepens shame and isolation. Imagine telling someone with type 1 diabetes to just regulate your insulin already with a bit more effort. It sounds absurd, doesn't it?
It's completely absurd.
Yet we often apply a similar, equally illogical standard to mental health. Mental health is health, and healing is a complex of a nonlinear process, not some instant fix.
And that nonlinearity of recovery is so key. Healing from mental illness rarely follows a straight path. For many, it's a journey of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Periods of profound progress mixed with setbacks. This doesn't mean someone isn't trying hard enough. It simply means healing is inherently messy and nonlinear.
Right.
This myth, unfortunately, creates immense internal conflict, making people hide their struggles because they already feel guilty that they can't just get better.
So what actually helps then? Our sources point to compassion, patience, and genuinely listening without rushing to fix or judge. It's about encouraging professional support and validating someone's experience without immediately attempting to solve it.
Yes, and remembering there is no predetermined timeline for healing. There is no deadline. There is absolutely no shame in needing time. You are profoundly allowed to take as long as you need. That listener who initially thought they were weak and lazy because I couldn't snap out of my anxiety powerfully learned that healing is not a race.
Such an important lesson. Sometimes progress isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's simply showing up for another day. Let's stop perpetuating the myth of snapping out of it and instead start standing beside people, offering genuine support as they bravely walk through their challenges.
People truly begin to heal when they feel seen, supported, and safe.
You can't just snap out of it. But with the right care, patience, and unwavering support, you absolutely can move through it. And you certainly don't have to navigate that journey alone. Which brings us to our next critical myth.
Myth number 7. Children and teens don't experience mental health problems. This is one of the most persistently harmful and often overlooked myths, I think. It's rooted in this romanticized, yet often inaccurate, idea that childhood is just this carefree, idyllic period, entirely immune to the complex struggles of the mind.
And what our deep dive into developmental psychology consistently reveals is profoundly different. Mental health challenges very often begin in youth. The data is stark. Approximately 50% of all lifetime mental illnesses emerge by the age of 14, and that figure rises to a staggering 75% by the age of 24.
It's shocking, isn't it?
It really is. Yet, tragically, far too many of these young individuals go undiagnosed because adults mistakenly assume they're just going through a phase.
Yeah.
And children, even very young ones, they feel deeply, they worry, they grieve, they experience fear, profound loneliness, trauma, academic pressure, intense emotional pain, just as adults do, but often without the developed language or coping mechanisms to articulate it.
Yeah.
We often mistake the signs. Maybe aggression is actually undiagnosed anxiety. Isolation could be an indicator of depression. Concentration issues might stem from ADHD or trauma or just overwhelming stress. If we casually brush these off, we miss crucial opportunities for early intervention. And the rates we're seeing are truly concerning. Our sources indicate a significant increase in reported depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and suicidal ideation among adolescents, particularly in the post-pandemic era, driven by factors like relentless social media pressure, intense academic competition, bullying, family instability.
All of that. Yet adults frequently dismiss their pain with phrases like, "What do you have to be depressed about?" or "You're too young to be stressed," completely invalidating their very real experiences.
Which leads to profound consequences, right? The silence forces young people to internalize their pain, fostering self-blame and deep shame, making them believe that something is fundamentally wrong with them.
But early intervention is absolutely critical. The sooner a mental health issue is recognized and addressed, the more effective and impactful treatment can be, potentially preventing years, if not decades, of suffering later in adulthood.
We truly need to stop underestimating the emotional complexity of youth. Just because a child isn't burdened by bills or raising a family doesn't mean their stress isn't real, valid, and intensely painful.
Exactly. Children and teens desperately need adults who listen with genuine curiosity, who believe their experiences, who proactively teach them healthy ways to cope, and who normalize the concept of seeking therapy.
We heard from one young person who shared, "Growing up, I never thought kids like me could have depression. I was scared to tell anyone because I thought I would be seen as crazy or attention-seeking. That breaks my heart."
It really does. And another parent learned how radically their relationship and their daughter's well-being shifted once they truly began listening to her struggles with anxiety. That listening part is key.
Absolutely. It's also important to remember that children absorb how we as adults discuss emotions and vulnerability. If we model open, compassionate conversations, they will feel safer doing the same.
And there's also a significant access gap, isn't there? Many schools lack sufficient counselors, and ongoing societal taboos still prevent open discussions within families sometimes.
And we cannot overlook the profound, lasting impact of severe childhood trauma abuse, neglect, chronic violence, which literally shapes and alters the developing brain.
Being young does not, unfortunately, grant anyone immunity from pain. Children and teens are human beings with complex inner lives, not merely future adults in waiting. Their experiences are profoundly valid, and their developing minds deserve the highest level of care.
When we truly prioritize the mental health of our youth, we are not just supporting individuals, we are actively helping them build a foundation for a stronger, more emotionally resilient future for all of us.
Well said. Okay, our next myth to address. Myth number 8. People with mental illness are violent. This is, hands down, one of the most damaging and persistent myths out there, disproportionately amplified by media, leading to widespread fear, stigma, and profound discrimination.
And the truth, which our sources consistently confirm, is precisely the opposite. The vast majority of people living with mental health challenges are not violent. In fact, research overwhelmingly demonstrates that individuals with mental illness are far more likely to be victims of violence rather than perpetrators. This runs directly counter to those sensationalized images we often see.
Studies repeatedly show that only a very small percentage of violent acts are directly attributable to someone with a diagnosed mental illness. And even in those rare instances, Other compounding factors like co-occurring substance abuse, severe socioeconomic stress, or unaddressed trauma are often much larger contributing factors. Mental illness on its own is rarely the solitary cause.
Yeah.
Most individuals living with conditions like depression, anxiety disorders, or even bipolar disorder experience fear, confusion, and deep emotional pain, not aggression or a propensity for violence.
This is where media representation becomes so critical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sensational headlines and dramatic portrayals, often fictionalized, unfortunately shape public perception, creating and reinforcing this false association. This distorted image fuels pervasive fear, leads to systemic discrimination, and actively discourages people from seeking treatment. It creates barriers to housing, employment, full participation in society, and it fosters profound misunderstanding where empathy is so desperately needed.
The reality is that violence is a deeply complex issue influenced by a myriad of factors: poverty, chronic trauma, substance misuse, social environment, access to resources. Attributing it primarily to mental illness is a grave oversimplification and a dangerous misdirection. Most people living with mental health conditions are peaceful, law-abiding individuals. We have a collective responsibility to challenge this myth at every opportunity by sharing accurate facts, by amplifying stories of recovery, and by advocating for responsible media portrayals.
Let's consciously choose to replace fear with understanding. Mental illness does not define someone's character, nor does it predict their actions. People living with mental illness are, in fact, more often victims than perpetrators of violence. They deserve our care, our respect, and our unwavering support, not our suspicion, judgment, or fear.
Absolutely. Moving on to myth number 9. Talking about mental health makes it worse. This is a common concern, I think, rooted in the fear that acknowledging a problem will somehow amplify it, or maybe that bringing up sensitive topics will create discomfort or, even worse, put ideas into someone's head.
But the truth, supported by extensive research, couldn't be clearer. Open, honest conversations about mental health don't make things worse. They quite literally save lives. The real danger, the true accelerant of the suffering, is silence and the pervasive stigma that drives it. These forces compel people to suffer in isolation, deepening their feelings of hopelessness and dramatically increasing the risk of tragic outcomes like suicide.
What open dialogue truly achieves is the creation of a vital space where people feel seen, heard, and genuinely understood. This normalization of struggles is what fosters authentic connection and builds profound trust. Our sources highlight that simply having just one person to talk to, someone who listens with genuine empathy and without judgment or stigma, can dramatically reduce feelings of hopelessness and significantly lower suicidal ideation. It can literally be a lifeline.
And these open conversations also serve a crucial educational purpose, don't they? They help us all recognize the signs of mental distress in ourselves and others, encouraging early intervention, which, as we discussed, is so vital for effective treatment. In schools and workplaces, fostering open dialogue leads to greater understanding, reduces stigma, and encourages the development of more supportive policies and environments.
And we absolutely must address the persistent fear that discussing suicide or self-harm will somehow put the idea in someone's head. Research consistently and unequivocally debunks this myth. In fact, directly asking someone if they're having suicidal thoughts can often provide immense relief, opening a critical path to safety and support.
It's so important to clarify.
Ignoring mental health or deliberately avoiding the topic does not make struggles disappear. It just forces them underground where they fester.
So how can we help, practically? Our sources outline several key actions. First, listen actively and without judgment. Just be present without rushing to fix or immediately offer solutions. Second, educate yourself and others with accurate information. Third, use kind, person-first language, avoiding stigmatizing labels. Fourth, encourage professional support, reminding individuals that seeking help is a profound act of strength.
And fifth, check in regularly and authentically because mental health is an ongoing journey, not a one-time event.
As one listener beautifully shared, talking about it with my family and friends changed everything.
Yeah, and another found solace and community in a support group after the devastating loss of their father to suicide. Connection matters.
By talking openly, we fundamentally shift the landscape. We build communities where mental health is treated with the inherent importance it deserves. We give people the profound permission to share their experiences without fear.
Talking about mental health does not make it worse. It makes healing possible. It makes hope visible. It quite literally saves lives.
And that brings us to our final myth for today's deep dive. Once you have a mental illness, you'll never recover. This is perhaps one of the most disheartening beliefs, suggesting that a mental health diagnosis is like a permanent prison, a life sentence with no hope of reprieve.
But the truth, grounded in decades of clinical experience and countless personal narratives, is profoundly more hopeful. Mental illness is not a permanent prison. Recovery is not only possible, it is happening every single day for millions of people around the world.
It's important to clarify what recovery often means in this context, right?
No.
It doesn't always imply a complete cure in the sense that symptoms vanish entirely, never to return. Instead, for many, recovery means learning how to effectively manage symptoms, building incredible resilience, and ultimately living a fulfilling, meaningful life despite the challenges.
Exactly. Our sources are rich with stories of countless individuals who have navigated conditions like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, even psychosis, and have gone on to lead rich, purposeful lives, returning to work, nurturing relationships, pursuing passions, contributing deeply to their communities.
These powerful stories underscore that mental illness is not the end of the road. It's often the beginning of a profound, albeit maybe slow and nonlinear, journey, one marked by ups and downs, setbacks, and extraordinary breakthroughs.
The modern mental health field has largely adopted what's called a recovery-oriented approach, focusing intensely on an individual's inherent strengths, fostering resilience, and cultivating hope as central to the healing process.
And the tools available today are more effective than ever before. Evidence-based therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, that structured approach helping you identify and challenge unhelpful thought patterns and behaviors. Alongside medication, peer support groups, deliberate lifestyle changes, mindfulness practices, and critically, a strong and supportive network of family, friends, community.
And importantly, mental illness does not define your identity. You are not your diagnosis. You are a person experiencing a health condition.
We must actively challenge the internalized stigma that whispers you're broken or damaged beyond repair. What modern neuroscience increasingly shows us is the brain's remarkable capacity to heal and adapt, this process called neuroplasticity.
Yes. And recovery also involves cultivating radical self-compassion, recognizing that setbacks are an inevitable part of the process, and celebrating even the smallest, quietest moments of progress.
To anyone listening who might be wrestling with this particular myth, please know this deep in your core. You can heal, you can grow, you can absolutely build a life that feels meaningful and joyful again.
We heard from that powerful listener living with bipolar disorder who courageously share how, through medication, therapy, and partner support, they found stability and hope.
Yeah.
And the countless trauma survivors who learn to reclaim their narratives and build lives of purpose are living proof that recovery is real. Mental illness is not forever. Recovery is real. And your story truly is still being written.
Understanding these myths as we've explored today is really just the first step, isn't it? The real power, the profound transformation lies in action, in what each of us can choose to do now to support ourselves and those around us. And remember, reaching out for help is not a weakness. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful signs of strength.
And there are genuine resources available to you out there. Crisis hotlines offer immediate, compassionate assistance 24/7. There are excellent apps designed for mental wellness that can provide immediate tools and support right on your phone. And therapy, whether it's in person or online, offers a safe, confidential space for guided healing and growth. Taking that initial step can feel incredibly daunting, I know, but it is one of the most courageous things you can do for yourself.
We truly want to hear from you.
Okay.
After this deep dive, which myth did you find most surprising or maybe eye-opening? And have you, like so many of us, ever believed one of these myths yourself before uncovering the truth? Sharing your thoughts really helps chip away at the stigma, one conversation at a time.
Definitely. And if this deep dive resonated with you, if it shifted your perspective on mental health even a little, please consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from hearing these truths. Sometimes one conversation One shared piece of understanding can genuinely change a life.
So here's a thought to leave you with. If we truly understood that mental health is a fundamental, universal part of the human condition, as intrinsic and essential as breathing, how do you imagine our daily interactions, our workplaces, our communities would fundamentally transform? It's a powerful thought, isn't it?
It really is. Looking ahead, our next deep dive will delve into some of the most common questions about therapy itself, what to expect in a session, practical tips for finding the right therapist for you, and how therapy can be a truly powerful tool for anyone's mental wellness journey. Consider it Therapy 101, coming soon.
Thank you so much for listening and for being a vital part of this compassionate community. Remember, your mental health matters every single day, and together we can absolutely create a more informed, more compassionate, and more hopeful future. Until next time, take care of your mind and take care of each other.